Students, recently I made a video on how you can achieve 7+ band scores in IELTS writing task 2, and in this video we understood the 4 criteria. The first one is how you have to understand the question, and the second one is how you have to plan. Number third is you have to clear your position, and the last one was how you have to explain well. So this is the second part of this video. If you haven't checked the first video, you can watch this video first and then you can come on to the second parts. So in this part I will try to speak in English because many of my students from other countries have asked me to make some videos in English. So I will try. I will also speak some Punjabi so that all the students could understand easily. So let's take an example for this method. So the question is, education of young people is highly prioritized in many countries. However, educating adults who cannot write or read is even more important, and governments should spend more money on this. To what extent do you agree or disagree? It is an extent agree disagree essay, and the question is you need to understand it because I have recently seen repeated questions with comparative degree more, because many of the students always consider that we have to write agree extent essay by going partially, and then we can write on the both sides agree and disagree. But when you have the comparative degree of adjective more in any IELTS writing task 2, you just have to go for either agree or disagree, and still you have to write on the both sides. I will teach you here how. Let's first understand what is the focus of this question. The focus of the question is educating adults who cannot read or write, means we have to educate those. The question is saying that we have to focus more on their education, means not on youngsters education, only on the adults education. And the second thing is we should spend more money on the adults education, not the young ones education. So it means adults education is considered to be more important than the young ones. Now you have to decide, is it really important to spend huge amount of money or the more money on the education of those who are illiterate, or we should spend more money on the people who have to take care of our nation, who are the nation builders, who are young. So we have to decide it after understanding the points. If I agree with this idea, I mean to say education of adults is more important than the young ones, and more money should be spent on the adults education. And I will give my supporting reason. The first is, if we spend more money on the adults education, if we focus on their education more, they would be independent. What does it mean to be independent? Independent means, for example, many of the times very old people who usually can't write or read ask the youngsters or the educated people to fill the forms in the banks, or sometimes they ask others to read newspapers for them so that they could get latest news. It means they are dependent on the educated people, they are dependent on the literate people. But if we spend more money on their education, they can become independent, which means they could learn how they have to write, how they have to read, and they can easily do these kind of easy tasks in the banks or anywhere else. Even they can read newspapers. So that's the reason I feel that definitely we should spend more money on education of adults than young ones. The second reason for my agreement is, in this way we can create an educated society. As you know, in the society sometimes young people are more educated than the adults people. Let me take an example of our parents. My parents are not that much educated so that they could tell us what we have to do in our education. They were just educated to complete their daily tasks. This is my example, and I can say that many of the parents or the our grandparents were not educated. So if we educate these adult parents or our adults people, In this way, we can create an educated society. So that's the reason I agree that we should spend more money on the education of adults and we should focus on their education rather than young ones. This is the agreement. Or I can also go for disagreement. In the disagree, obviously, if I go for disagree, I would say more money should be spent on the young ones education and less money should be spent on the adults education. The reason for this, so let's see. Disagree means their education is not important, means adults education is not important and more money should not be spent, and we should not spend more money on their education. It means young's education is more important. Its implied meaning is that if we don't want to spend a huge amount of money on adults education, it means we want to spend that money on the young ones education and more money should be spent over there. So why I am saying this? What are the supporting reasons? First of all, I would say, why do we need to spend money on adults education? They don't have to do the jobs now. If a person is in his 40s or 50s, he doesn't have to do any job. Why do we need to spend a huge amount of money on their education? So that's the reason I think I agree that I feel that their education is important, but it doesn't mean that young ones education is ignored. I just want to say their education is important. Yes, teach them, definitely make them able to read and write, but don't spend more money on their education than young ones. We need to spend more money on young ones education. We need to spend only required amount on the adults education. So that's the reason I'm saying that adults don't have to do any jobs, so we should not spend huge amount of money on their jobs. The second argument, the second reason is young are nation builders. The young generation had to take care of our nation. Young generation's education is more important. We need our young generation to be more educated so that our coming generations could get more educated. So they have to take care of the nation. So that's the reason I feel that we must not spend huge amount of money or more money on the adults education. We need to spend more money on the young ones education. So I have given reason for both sides. So as this is an extent essay, you can also write on agree and disagree both sides. So what we just have to do, if I go for agree, it means I would say that adults education important and we should spend money on it. I will also explain why do we need to spend less money on young ones education. And if I go for disagree, then I will explain why do we need to spend more money on young ones education and why do we need to spend the less money on adults education. So in an extent essay or in essay in which comparative degree more is used, you have to go on one side, but you also have to discuss the second side. Hope you would have understood what I was trying to teach here. So if you like this video, don't forget to like it, share it and subscribe my channel. And always give me suggestions, how can I improve and how can I make some effective videos for you. You can also suggest some topics in which you consider yourself a weak or you face problems. So again, if you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe my channel. Thank you.